Hey PokéDad fan club, it's me PokéDad, and today we're doing a set review for the Red Flash and Blue Impact sets that came out in Japan. We will see this as Breakthrough, which will be our XY8 here in the US in November. But since the cards are already here, we want to go ahead and begin thinking about different combinations and how they'll affect the meta as it comes out closer to November. So here's how I want to go ahead and do this. I'll probably look at the EX cards and the break cards first. Then we'll look at some of the other cards. I also am going to do a separate video just on the trainers because I have a feeling that this video is going to go long enough as it is. So we'll have the items and supporters on a different video. And then also, I want to just talk a little bit about the meta as we first start, where it's at now, and then where I think it may go in the future. So the first thing that's big about this set is that they've introduced the new card, the breaks. And I have to tell you, in my personal opinion, I'm not too optimistic about them right now. However, I will say that they may introduce something in the next set or in the next couple of sets that make them more powerful. Now, the idea behind the break card is they are another evolution of a particular Pokemon. For instance, Raichu has Raichu break. So for instance, it would go, you would start with Pikachu, evolve to Raichu, and then you could evolve to Raichu break. Thus, it's actually adding an extra evolution into the process. However, the break cards are quite a bit stronger. They usually add an extra attack or an extra ability, or they don't usually do that, they actually do that. And then they usually add 30 to 40 more HP to the Pokemon. So Raichu, who might be a 90 HP Pokemon, would then become maybe 130 HP, and then instead of just having 2 attacks, would have 3 attacks available to him. Again, though, you have to get that, you have the added cost of having an extra evolution, and it's not so bad. The evolutions aren't the bad part. It's that you have to add more deck space to get them out, and so that's why I think breaks are going to be actually. I think they were designed to be strong against EXs. However, I think they're going to be counterproductive, to be honest with you, for the most part. Now, there may be a couple that we'll talk about that could be useful, but for the most part, I feel like they're going to be counterproductive. That being said, they may have some kind of mechanic that comes out that makes them get out faster in the future, and then they would be much more useful. But anyway, right now I just don't feel like, I feel like maybe 1 or 2 of the breaks could be useful. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a moment. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about the EXs. So in Red Flash, there's Houndoom EX and Mega Houndoom EX, and then there's Mewtwo EX and Mega Mewtwo EX-Y. Now, the thing to remember about this is both sets have a Mewtwo and a Mega Mewtwo, and then they have one other EX with its Mega form. So let's look at Houndoom, and I don't know if this is just going to be the card. We may have to actually go down. It's a nice card. Matter of fact, we may just be better off just going through the set, and when we get to them, we'll talk about it. I think that's probably going to be the best bet for us. So let's just start off with the first one. Paris is just the basic, so I'm not going to look at that. Parasect, I don't think this is going to see competitive play, but I do think it will see some fun, be in some fun decks. So Paris here has colorful Spore, and choose 3 of your Pokemon, search your deck for 3 different types of basic energy, and attach one to each of your Pokemon you choose. Shuffle your deck afterward. This is kind of like Xerneas, but it actually takes it a step further. However, the problem with it is you're going to have to get 3 types of energy, and you're going to have to put it on 3 different Pokemon. So that means you're going to be having to play at least 3 types here. Now, maybe in a dragon deck case, this could be useful, but most dragons require a lot of energy. So if you get 3 dragons out and you put 1 basic energy on each of them, basically you have 3 dragons that none of them are charged up. However, there might be other cards, and there is actually a break card in here that could be useful to help that. And we'll talk about that later, that allows you to switch. It actually becomes the new Aromatisse, and we'll talk about that later. And that might make Parasect usable, but I guess only time will tell. Alright, we're going to go right into our first break now. We've got Chespin, Quilladin, Chestnut, and Chestnut Break. I'm not going to spend too much time on the Chespin or the Quilladin because there's nothing really spectacular about them. No abilities or anything like that. So we'll start off with the Chestnut. So Chestnut and Chestnut Break, I think, could be viable. However, there's one serious problem with them. The reason why I think they could be viable is because they are grass type, and with the Forest of Giant Plants in play, grass types can evolve very quickly. So you could theoretically evolve to Chestnut Break on turn 1. However, we know that we've seen Vileplume decks, and even with the Forest of Giant Plants, it's really difficult to get a turn 1 Vileplume. So, and that's a stage 2. Imagine if you're going to a stage 3, which is what Chestnut Break technically really is. Now, to be able to get Chestnut Break out on 1 turn seems very unlikely, but it might be that you can get him out in a couple turns, and you might even get a couple of them started. I don't think that's the thing that's going to hinder Chestnut Break. The thing I think that's going to hinder Chestnut Break is the massive energy cost. We're looking at 4 energies here and 3 energies here just to do the first attack. So it just seems like, man, this is going to be really tough to be able to use. Now, fortunately, we can use double colorless, but right now everybody's using double colorless, so enhanced hammers are on the rise, and so is Zero Sick. So let's just look at his attacks and see if they're going to even be worth investing the energy into. Also, look, a massive 4 energy retreat cost. So gonna have to play a lot of switching cards in this kind of deck too. Alright, so the first attack for a grass and 2 colorless Horn Piercing Lariat does 60 damage, and if your opponent's active Pokemon has any damage counters on it, this attack does 60 more damage. So you could do 120, but against opposing EXs, that's not going to knock them out unless they have quite a bit of damage on them already. And the thing is, with stage 1s like Raichu or Vespiquen, most likely they're not going to have any damage on them anyway. They usually get one-shotted. So 60 damage isn't going to really do much, and 120 isn't going to do a lot against EXs unless you're playing like Fortress or Bats or something like that that specifically can be worked hand in hand with that attack. But if you play Bats or Fortress, now you're already going to have so much on your deck to get the Chestnut and the Chestnut Break out that now you've got to add even more in, and it just seems really like it's going to slow it down and make it clunky. The second attack is Eternal Press, does 100 damage, and during your opponent's next turn, damage done to this Pokemon by your opponent's attacks are reduced by 20. Now, one thing I will say about Chestnut is he has a massive 160 HP, which you can see right here, and when he breaks, he turns into 190, which I'll show that to you in just a minute. So that 20 reduction by 20 could be really useful, but you're only doing 100 damage. I guess if you have a muscle band, you can do even more. So it might be useful. You could use this attack to kind of keep him in play until you can run into your Chestnut Break. So let's just look at the Chestnut Break though. Now, one thing I will say about these cards is they're really beautiful and they're really nice, and you actually turn them sideways on top of the previous evolution so that you'll actually, maybe I can even show it a little bit here. So so it would kind of look like this, and now you can see he has 190 HP. He still has these 2 attacks available to him, but he now has a 3rd attack. So his HP went up by 30, and then he adds another attack. So that's what the Chestnut Break will look like. So anyway, what does this extra attack do though? And I will say it's a really strong attack. Tough Hammer does 160 damage. With a Muscle Band, you're going to be able to KO most standard EXs, so that's good. And then you do 30 damage to Chestnut Break. And then this attack does 30 damage to all of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So that could be very useful if you can get it out. But again, remember, look at all the things you're going to have to have. You're going to have Forest of Giant Plants, Chespin, Quilladin, Chestnut, and Chestnut Break, a Muscle Band, a DCE, and 2 Grass. And if you're accelerating the Grass, you're going to have some kind of other accelerator in there. So that's a lot to be able to use that. If you can get it all out, though, you'll be killing your opponent. But you may take 3 or 4 turns just to get there, and by then they may have already taken several KOs, and it'll be hard to come back from. Anyway, so that's the Chestnut Break. That's the first one I wanted to show you. Alright, Skiddo, Razor Leaf, and Push Up, neither of those. Go-Goat, I have to be honest, I have not seen this one. It just released right at the last minute before they got everything up. Run Through does 10 damage, and this attack does 30 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon, so that could be interesting. Woodhorn does 90 damage and heal 30 damage from this Pokemon. So Go-Goat's not something that looks like it's going to be super played. So we'll move on. Alright, now we'll move on to Houndoom EX and Mega Houndoom EX. And I have to say that these are... I'm kind of having mixed emotions about these, okay? So let me grab a drink real quick. Mouth is getting dry already, and we're just getting started. Alright, Houndoom EX. Okay, let's take a look at the picture. I'll kind of keep it over here so you can see it. Alright, has 170 HP. For 1 fire, does Melt Horn, and then discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. So you could actually use this Houndoom EX as a mill deck, in fact. Play a lot of... you could play a lot of healing cards and a lot of energy disruption, hand disruption, like Red Card and Ace Trainer. And then use Melthorn to just keep milling your opponent. And I think I think people will try that. I think that's a very feasible way to look at this deck. Look at Houndoom, because with having 170 HP, if you can heal him off, he can just keep milling over and over and over. However, because he is an EX card, he's going to take 2 prizes if they knock him out. So I don't know if that's going to be better than Bunnelby or not. Anyway, that's one way to look at it. I think though this Grand Flame, now it only, for 2 fire energy, it only does 50 damage. And you're thinking, oh man, that's not much. But then you attach a fire energy from your discard pile to one of your benched Pokemon. Alright, I want you to think about this scenario, because and this is just one of my ideas right now. You know, I'm really hyped on Giratina right now, so I could actually see a Mega Houndoom Giratina deck coming together. So think about it this way though. Let's imagine that we play Double Dragon Energy on turn 1 on the Giratina on the bench. We then get 3 fire energies into the discard pile. Then we blacksmith 2 of those fire energies onto Houndoom EX. He hits for 50 on turn 1, and then you take the 3rd fire energy and put it on Giratina, and then the next turn all you need is 1 more fire energy or 1 more energy period to put on Giratina, and by turn 2 you've got Giratina attacking. So turn 1 you've got Houndoom at least putting some chip damage out there and getting your Giratina charged up. Turn 2, you have Giratina ready to go. So you could attack with Giratina, or you have the option to Mega Evolve Mega Houndoom on turn 2, and you could now do this. So Mega Houndoom has 210 damage, and its attack is Inferno Fang. It does 80 damage for 2 fire energies. Again, that's not a whole lot, but you can discard both of those fire energies and now do an additional 80 damage. Well, if you take the 50 chip damage off the first attack and you then do 160 on the second attack, you're now doing 210 combined, and that's going to knock out Mega Manectric, Mega Gardevoir, and there's even the possibility, I think, of taking an extra turn and Mega Evolving him with a Muscle Band, and now that 80 plus that 80 does 160, and with a Muscle Band does 180, which will knock out most EXs. And here's the cool thing about Fire, is if you discard the energies, you always can just blacksmith them back on next turn. So that's no big deal. But they came out with a new burn energy, which we'll talk more about in my next video, that allows you, whenever you discard it from a fire Pokemon, you reattach it immediately. So if you had 2 burn energies on Mega Houndoom, you would literally be hitting for 160 every turn. You would discard them and then reattach them over and over and over. And being able to do that on turn 2 is pretty good. Now, there's one downfall to this I want to say, and that is it's only 160 damage. And since it's only 160 damage, it doesn't hit those magic numbers to knock out EXs unless you have A, Ariados, which could help you hit the magic number by poisoning your opponent, or B, taking an extra turn to Mega Evolve and putting a Muscle Band on him. So 160 is kind of like right in that range, but not good enough. However, it is pretty good for just 2 energies, and realizing that you can blacksmith at any time and you have that extra special energies, 160 from turn 2 on is not bad at all. So I think Mega Houndoom is going to see play. I think really like the idea of putting him in with Giratina, so that if the opponent does Mega Evolve, then you put up Giratina to do the attacking. But if the opponent doesn't Mega Evolve, you keep Mega Houndoom there and just keep hitting him for 160 over and over and over again. So anyway, that's my take on Mega Houndoom. We'll move right along. Pansear and Simisear aren't really all that special. I think most of the monkeys, Simisage and I forget the other one, I apologize, but they all have this basic same idea here, where you can put energies from your discard pile into your hand. I think all of them have that, but for their perspective type that they are using. So alright, Goldeen and Seeking, I just don't really see much here, I don't think. Wet Horn for 1 water energy. This attack does 80 more damage if this Pokemon was healed during the turn. And it kind of works with Assault, which does 40 damage for just a colorless, does 10 damage to itself, so you could heal it with even a potion. And then next turn it would be able to do 90 for 1, which 90 for 1 is not too bad, actually. Is that card even going to come up? Doesn't look like it. So anyway, that's an idea. I just don't think it's going to make it into competitive play. Staryu is the basic type. Starmie here. Deep Sea Swirl. Shuffle your hand into your deck and then draw 7 cards. I could see that possibly being a tech card to always make sure that you have 7 cards in your hand, which could be useful, especially with our supporters kind of lacking right now. But you're going to probably lose the Starmie, so you're only going to get to use it 1 time, and you are going to have to evolve it and waste the energy. So there's a lot of resources you're giving up to be able to do that. Even Bond, and this Starmie doesn't even really have an attack on it. Even Bond, if you and your opponent have the same number of bench Pokemon, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. So could be useful, but I mean, you could constantly paralyze them and maybe use that as a deck out, mill type deck, but to be able to constantly have the same number of bench Pokemon seems a little unrealistic. So with that, we'll just move on. Remoraid is a basic type, but in the other set, there's a Remoraid that's, and it's stage 1 that's pretty good. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So we got the return of Empoleon here, Piplup and Primplup. Nothing really special from them. Looks like they only have 1 attack. Is that true? Yeah, 1 attack there. And just 1 attack there. Alright, and then Empoleon has this, the attack isn't all that special, but the ability is pretty good. Noble Power here. As long as this Pokemon is in play, your basic Pokemon's attacks do 20 more damage. This is going to be helpful for like legendary cards like Xerneas and Yveltal. It also could be useful for your basic EX. As a matter of fact, even Giratina could take an advantage of that 20 extra damage. So it's kind of like having a built-in muscle band for your basics. The only downside is, and this you're going to hear this over and over, is they have a lot of stage 2s, and a lot of them are very, very good. They have a lot of great abilities, but there's really no good way to get them into play. Stage 2s just still, I mean, Rare Candy is probably the best way. That being said, Empoleon is a water type, so you could get it in through Archie's Ace in the Hole, but I don't know that you would want to just for this ability. So anyway, grass, water, and fighting types tend to have the best ways to get stage 2s in, and I was hoping that fairy types would gain away. I was actually looking for a supporter card that would be something like discard 2 cards and search your deck for a stage 2 and play it down to your bench. That would be really cool, since Fairy has a lot of stage 2s that aren't even really going to get played in this set and from the last set. But nothing like that came out. That was just wishful thinking. That might have been OP anyway, but anyway, so that's Empoleon. I don't know if I showed the card, but we'll take a look at it. I mean, the artwork's pretty awesome there. But not as good as the last Empoleon that was around. Alright, you got Snover and Abomasnow. 80 damage if your opponent's active Pokemon is a dragon type, then that Pokemon is paralyzed. I could see this possibly being played again as a tech against dragon decks, but it seems like a lot you'd have to add just to put it in as a tech. Ice Breath for 4 energies, nothing really special there. Alright, now this Magnemite, again, here's another stage 2 that I want to just stop and talk about a little bit. Is really good. I mean, it's a really good one. It's like Blastoise. Magnezone here has Magnet Circuit, so it has the ability, just like the old Blastoise did, as often as you like during your turn before you attack, you may attach as many lightning type energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. I think this is really good, especially since we have cards like Fisherman that are coming back and Super Rod are coming back. And then even just energy retrieval is going to be here. So this could be very useful. That being said, again, it's a stage 2, so the best way to get it out is going to be through Rare Candy. And you know, stage 2 decks require a lot of resources to be able to use them properly. However, this one might actually work because right now there's a lot of lightning type cards that just use a lot of lightning energy that can do massive amounts of damage. One of them I'm thinking of right now is Mega Ampharos. So if you just run a very basic deck where you're just using Mega Ampharos and Magnezone, you could probably, I mean, it's a simple strategy, but it's one that I think would be very effective. And then you'd still have enough space to get your other resources in there, energies and trainer cards and things like that. So Magnezone I see as a real big possibility, and I think this is going to make Mega Ampharos a potential play in the coming meta, but only time will tell on that. Here's one. Actually, I think this card will work. Will be along with Magnezone. Will do very well. This is the one. This is kind of like Keldeo. So you got Keldeo Blastoise all over again right here. Not the ability of part, but Raikou has Shining Body. So if there are any lightning energy attached to this Pokemon, any damage done to this Pokemon is reduced by 20. Well, obviously lightning is going to be on this guy. So damage done to him is going to be reduced by 20. So now to one-hit KO him, it's going to take 140 instead of 120. He has Thunder Lance, which has 3 colorless, does 50 damage, but then does 20 more damage for each lightning energy attached to this Pokemon. So combine him with Magnezone, and if you get 3 on there, now you're hitting 70, 90, 110, and the sky's the limit. I mean, if you got 8 energies on him, you know, you'd be hitting for what, 210 or something like that. So, and then also with lightning, there's a lot of stuff that's weak to lightning right now, so that makes Raikou and just lightning types really strong right now. Alright, now we're coming to one of the big cards in the set, Mewtwo EX and Mega Mewtwo EX. This is the Y version, I believe. Or is this this is the Y version. Alright, before I reveal these cards and talk about them, though, I do want to remind you that we are going to be doing Tuesday night fights still, and now that the new set has come out, I like to go ahead and start proxying these and playing them right away. So you'll probably start seeing me do some of these videos with the new proxies already on Monday, deck profiles, and then on Tuesday night fights we'll begin playing with them. So this is obviously one of them that we're going to build a deck around. Mewtwo EX. Again, this is the Y version. Mega Mewtwo is the Y version. So this Mewtwo EX has 2 attacks. And even though the basic Mewtwo's are going to be really good, I have a feeling that the attacks are just a little bit underwhelming, that most people are going to play the Megas. But I do like the idea of Mewtwo being a tech again against fighting types like Machamp and Medicham and Machamp and Lucario. Sorry about that. Those 3, because I see fighting types beginning to gain ground again, because Manectric is becoming so big, and then so you can run the counter to Manectric. Well, now we're going to run the counter to the fighting. So I see Mewtwo even could be just a tech within another deck. Even Mega Mewtwo could, which I think is kind of cool. But let's talk about what Mewtwo EX does. So Blast Ball for 1 psychic type does 30 damage. And it does 30 times the number of psychic energy attached to this Pokemon. So this is kind of cool because you could add multiple psychics. Now, there's no real good way to accelerate psychic energy, but even attaching over time, you could have 2 or 3 of these and be hitting for 90 consistently. And against Pokemon that are weak to psychic, 3 psychic energies could do 180 damage if they're weak to it. And then you also have the next one, which is psychic, 2 psychics and a colorless. Of course, if you have Dimension Valley in play, that would just reduce down to 2 psychics. Damage exchange, switch the number of damage counters on this Pokemon with your opponent's active Pokemon. So this could be kind of cool because you could almost use Mewtwo as like just tank it and let it absorb some damage. And then you might even just have 1 psychic on there and begin building something else up. And then maybe you could use an energy switch and just change it real quick. And then take all the damage counters that are on the Mewtwo and put them on the opposing Pokemon. assuming that you haven't done any damage to them, it would be a good idea because you could just switch all your damage counters to them. I don't know, in theory it sounds good, but in playability, I'm just not sure how good that either of those attacks are going to be. I have a feeling the other Mewtwo EX is going to have more playability and will probably go up higher in price than this one will. However, I may be wrong on that. Alright, as far as the Mega Mewtwo's though, I think this one is probably going to be, I think this is the wrong one actually. Yeah, I think both of those might be the wrong one. I think these are from the other set, or either they've got the numbers wrong here. Let's see. Did this one have a psychic? Yeah, okay, so that one was right. But this is definitely, this might be the right one, but the wording here is wrong. I believe this is the the Mega Mewtwo X wording. But I think I can remember what this one does. Alright, so it has 210 HP, so it's a little bit less HP than the other Mega Mewtwo. But for a double colorless, it does 10 damage, but it then does 30 damage times the number of energy on your active and your opponent's active. So if you have a double colorless, you're hitting 70 base because you got 10 plus 30 plus 30 is 70. And then if they have, say, 4 energies on them, then you're hitting another 120, so you would be hitting 170. And of course you can stack more energy on this Mewtwo, so you could put 2 double colorlesses on there, and now instead of hitting base 70, you would be hitting base 130. And if they even have just a couple energies on them, you'll be knocking them out. So it's kind of like Mewtwo's old X-Ball, but even more stronger. And I think this is the one that's going to see the most play. I think the other one won't see as much play. It's more of the fighting type one. It's still a psychic type, but it has fighting attacks in it. Oh, I'm sorry. This is right. The Psychic Infinity, they just got the HP wrong. Okay. So, yeah, this is exactly what it does. The attack does 10 damage plus 30 more damage. The only thing is they got the HP wrong. The HP on this one is 210, and the HP on the other one is 230. So, but yeah, the attack right there is correct. That's for that card. Alright, so anyway, Misdrevious has Haunt, put 2 damage counters on your opponent's active Pokemon, and then Mismagius is a stage 1. It has the ability Twisted Spell, and once during your turn before you attack, when you play this card from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may use this ability. Your opponent shuffles his or her hand into his or her deck and draws cards equal to the number of his or her remaining prizes. So this is kind of like an N, but only for your opponent. So, and you can choose to do this or not do this. But whenever you evolve from Misdrevious to Mismagius from your hand, you can have your opponent shuffle their cards into their deck and then draw as many prize cards they have. So this is an ability that is going to actually be hand disruption. But again, it will rely on if your opponent is ahead in the game. So it doesn't really do much for them. I mean, you don't want them drawing 6 if it's early in the game. And he does have the attack Deep Curse, so for a Psychic and 2 colorless, does 60 damage, and then your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. Alright, we have a reprint of Ralts and Kirlia, this time as Psychic types, and then we also have a Gallade, but it's not a Psychic type, it's a fighting type, so we'll talk about that in just a moment. There's nothing really special except maybe this invitation right here for Kirlia. We can look at that if we want to. Put a supporter card from your discard pile into your hand. So it's kind of like a VS Seeker, but it comes in the attack form. Might be useful, especially if it's in the early game before people have set up and are attacking really hard. That could be useful to bring a supporter back. This Cresselia, I don't think it's really going to be all that good, though I have seen some people say they'll probably play with it. It has the ability My Way, which allows, if there's a stadium in play, then the retreat cost on this Cresselia is 0. Right now it's currently 2, but if there's a stadium, then it retreats for free. It might be kind of cool because sometimes you need a free retreater to know what you're going to do on your next turn. That's why I like Vespiquen and why so many people like Hawlucha, because you don't have to commit to who you're going to bring up until the end of your turn. With a free retreater in play. So I guess it could be used for that. But as far as the attack goes, 70 damage, even if you had the Dimension Valley in play for 2 energies, is, you know, not going to be all that great. Though I guess it could be, again, a tech used to help against other psychic types or Pokemon that are weak to psychic. You could potentially use it for that. Alright, we've got Cubone and Marowak. And Marowak Break. Cubone we're not going to really spend any time on. Marowak evolves from Cubone. This is one of those break cards that I do think could see some play. There's the Marowak. Alright, and let me just kind of put him up here, I think. Alright, so for the first attack, 1 fighting, snipe. Choose one of your opponent's Pokemon. This attack does 30 damage to that Pokemon. That's actually pretty cool. You can begin sniping Shaymins on the bench, and their resistance aren't going to come into play. So you could hit them for 30 there, you know. Though it would take a lot more damage than this 30 to knock out a Shaymin. But you could begin even on turn 1 doing that. Bone Windmill is going to be similar to Donphan, except that it's only going to be in certain situations. So for a fighting and a colorless, it does 60 damage. Of course, we know fighting has all the damage enhancers like Strong Energy and Fighting Stadium, which can make this attack even stronger, easily hitting 100, 120 with the right situation. If your opponent's active Pokemon is a Pokemon EX, then you switch this Pokemon with one of your benched Pokemon. So it's kind of intriguing because if he's used as an attacker for a Stage 1 against a Stage 1 deck like Raichu, Vespiquen, or Night March, those kind of decks, he's going to stay up in the active, so it'll be kind of like you keep hitting each other back and forth, back and forth. But if you're going against an EX deck, he's going to play more like Donphan. So you could have your Robo-Subs, and you could have your Hawluchas and Wobbuffets, and even Trevenant, those kind of things. You could be putting them on the bench and then kind of spinning turn into them like Donphan used to do. As long as you, and with Floatstone coming back, that's a very viable option now. So Marowak is going to be like the new Donphan for Standard. Alright, and then we'll go ahead and see if I can put the break over it to kind of give you an idea what it looks like. So it goes from 100 HP to 140 HP, and it adds a new attack, and the new attack is called Bone Revenge. Does 20 damage, and this attack does 40 more damage for each prize card your opponent has taken. Now this is a very intriguing card because it will help if you're behind in prizes, or even if you're not behind, if you're like tied in prizes, they have 4 and you have 4. I mean, you think about it, 4 times 40 is 160, plus 20 is 180. You throw in a Muscle Band and a Strong Energy and a Fighting Stadium, and you're now going to be knocking out most Megas. Not just EXs, but most Megas. So this break card, actually, you could just play Marowak as like a Donphan, and then just have 1 or 2 of the break, and bring the break in at the last minute and finish the game off. So this is why I think this card is actually one of the few break cards that is going to be playable. It's only a Stage 1, so the break only makes it a Stage 2. And the Stage 1 is very viable in itself. So I think that's going to make it very good, to be honest. Anyway, moving right along. Alright, we're going to Swinub, Piloswine, and Magmoswine. They all kind of work together here. And I think what I'm going to do is after we get done with this set, I'll take a break, pause the video, and then we'll do the other set. And I'm still going to do the items and supporters in a separate video. So, because there's a reason, I have a reason for that. But Swinub, Piloswine, and Magmoswine, stage 2 here. Piloswine is really the one that you want to be attacking with. It has Footprints of the Herd. It has for fighting and double colorless. It does 30 damage, and this attack does 30 damage plus 10 more damage for each colorless in the retreat cost of your Swinub, Piloswine, and Magmoswine. So you could have all of these guys. You could, if you could max these Hidden Ball Trick and Mamoswine in. That has 4 retreat, so now you're going to do 100 and no, you do 70, but then the Piloswine itself has a 2, so you're going to do another 20. So just for having a Piloswine and a Mamoswine, you're going to be doing 90. If you could get another Mamoswine, and maybe another Piloswine in play, you'll be doing massive damage. You could be doing 130, 170, and again, with it being a fighting type, fighting has all the damage enhancers, so you could easily be knocking out EXs and Megas if you could get them all in play. I also am going to just briefly talk about Magmoswine, and some of you probably want to look at there's the Piloswine card. Alright, and then the Mamoswine card. So it has thick fat. So, and this actually could come into play because fire types and water types do 30 less damage to him. And he's only a 160, so if you're hitting 180, which is what a normal EX might be, but then you take the minus 30 off, now you don't even knock him out. So it's going to take 2 shots to knock him out. So I do think that thick fat ability actually could come in handy, and you could actually see that will win games. Primeval Roar, 80 damage. It's a massive cost to play. 80 damage, and if you have a stadium card in play, this attack does 40 more. If your opponent has a stadium card in play, this Pokemon heals 40 damage. So if your stadium is in play, it's going to do 120. If your opponent's stadium is in play, you're going to do 80 and then heal yourself 40. I don't know how I feel about that. Coming back from the Kirlia, though, I really think Gallade has a very good possibility of being played as a tech in Stage 1 decks. You can Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick him in, and you don't have to build your whole deck around the Maxies. You need him in certain situations, like against Mega Manetric decks. So Gallade has, first of all, the ability called Premonition. Once during your turn before you attack, you may look at the top 5 cards of your deck and put them back on top of your deck in any order. So that can be very useful, so that you can choose which cards are going to come, you're going to draw next. Furthermore, I think this is going to fit really well with Night March. Because then they'll be able to have an attacker, kind of like how Night March used Empoleon to come in and help with the Landorus EX deck. Empoleon, well, this will come in and help against the Mega Manetric decks. Sensing Blade does 60 damage for just a double colorless, so it works with Night March and Vespiquen, just like they're mostly using double colorless anyway. So Sensing Blade does 60 damage, but if you played a supporter card from your hand this turn, then the attack does another 70, so now you're doing 130. If you can play a supporter card, which Lysander is a supporter card, Lysander up that Mega Manetric, and now you've taken a KO on the Mega Manetric for just a double colorless. So I really like Gallade. I think he's going to be played as a tech in many, many decks here. His ability is very good, and his attack is playable with many of the Stage 1 decks right now. Alright, Zorua, the main Zorua and Zoroark Break are in the other set, so we'll talk more about that when we get there. Yveltal is a darkness type. ability Fright Night, which can be very useful as long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon. All the Pokemon tools have no effect. So that means if they're trying to hit you with a muscle band, it's not going to do anything. Of course, if you have a muscle band on Yveltal, it's not going to do anything if he's in the active. So I don't know how much that'll help. His attack is a little bit underwhelming, but I could actually see him as a starting Pokemon to keep like Spirit Links from being usable and muscle bands not being usable. But his Jet Black Spear for a dark and 2 colorless does 60 damage. Choose one of your opponent's benched Pokemon EXs and it does 60 damage to them. Now the one thing that this is cool, it's not going to do a lot of damage to active, but you could begin to start sniping Shaymins off. For 2 attacks you could take a Shaymin out, and if you could do 4 attacks you could take 2 Shaymins out and you'd be 4 prize cards ahead just with Yveltal. So I think that's pretty cool. Let me show you that card. I'm sure many of you wanted to see Yveltal. He is a favorite among many people. I think it's pretty awesome artwork. And again, he's got the lightning weakness, but the resistance to fighting. So, alright, and then we have Bronzor and Bronzong. The new Bronzong isn't anything. The Bronzor isn't anything. The Bronzong could be useful, though I don't think it's going to be played as much as the current Bronzong. Pain Amplifier, put 3 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon that already have damage counters on it. So this is kind of like Mega Gallade. With Pain Amplifier, you're going to do 3 damage counters on anybody that already has damage on them. So Fortress could come in handy. Bats will come in handy. You can begin to put a lot of damage on the bench, and then you could bring Meowstic in to move the damage around and knock people out. Knock away 70 damage and could do potentially 20 more. So nothing special. I don't think that Bronzong is going to see much play. However, I do think the next card here is going to see much play. It's Mr. Mime. He is back, but he's as a fairy this time. And he has Bench Barrier again. He's going to prevent all damage done to your bench Pokemon by attacks. So the Mr. Mime that was the Psychic type that had the Bench Barrier is now back, but he's as a fairy type, and he will have he will see play, especially against bats and against types that try to hit the bench. Alright, his juggling is not going to be anything. If he sees play, it'll just be because of his ability. Spritzy and Aromatisse come back, but Aromatisse is not going to be what it used to be. With Fairy Transfer, I don't know that there's much that could top that Aromatisse. This Aromatisse has heavy perfume. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused, and here's the cool thing: if it damages itself in confusion, they'll now put 6 damage counters on instead of just 3. There are some confusion lock decks that are kind of floating around, but I don't see how this could make it into it. If it could, it would be really neat, but I'm not sure if it will be able to lock the attack out. That's the problem. You can lock them from retreating, but then they're still going to be able to get the possibly 50-50 get the attack off and knock your Aromatisse out. Whereas with Malamar and some of the other cards that automatically cause the coin flip to go tails, that will keep people from actually doing the attack. And the other thing about Aromatisse is they wouldn't want to attack if they knew they were always going to flip tails anyway, so to do the extra 60 damage counters is not really all that important anyway. Hug does 30 damage and your opponent can't retreat, so that's that. I guess you could heavy perfume them and then next turn just keep hugging them so they can't retreat, and then hope they keep damaging themselves. But I have a feeling Aromatisse is going to get knocked out before that, before you get a good hug in. Axew, this is another one that they did the full set in the other set, so we'll talk about that more. Doduo, nothing really special here. Dodrio here has Retreat Aid, which I can see this card being played. It's kind of like Hydreigon EX for dragons, but it's now going to be used for basically any types. When this Pokemon is on your bench, your active Pokemon retreat cost is 2 colorless less. So you could literally see 2 of these in play and knock the retreat cost of all your Pokemon down to nothing. It's a very intriguing play. However, you're going to have to use bench space up and resources in your deck to get the Dodrio out. His Fury attack flips 3 coins, and this attack does 40 times the number of heads. It's still pretty strong, so 40 times, you know, you're probably going to flip 1 or 2, so you're going to average 80, and you might get lucky and hit that 120. So, but for the most part, he's going to be used for the retreat aid, and I can actually see that card being in play, and since it's colorless, it'll fit into a lot of decks. All right, the Starly, the Staravia, and the Staraptor. I don't think this is going to be that great, but some people do. This first attack, Whirlwind Slash, 70 damage, but before you do the damage, your opponent switches his or her active with one of his or her benched. So you can kind of do bench damage without, you know, without having to worry about, I don't remember. I don't know why this is going to be all that great, but some people think it is. So at least I was reading in the forums. Alright, so that is all of the Pokemon in this set. We'll talk about the trainer cards in the next set. Later. But we still have this other set that we have to go through. We have Blue Impact that we want to go through. And then I'll do all the trainer cards together in a third video. So anyway, keep an eye out. This is just the Red Flash one. We'll do the Blue Impact in just a little bit.